السلام عليكم. مرحبا بكم معنا اليوم ومرحبا بنا عندكم في إقليم شفشاون تارودانت والصويرة. حنا فرحانين بزاف بأن العائلة ديالنا ماشي غير في دوار تيك، مي العائلة ديال أكاديمية النساء المقاولات غادا وكتكبر ما شاء الله. حنا في النسخة الثانية وفرحانين اللي راكم معنا. ما غاديش ناخذ من وقتكم بزاف حيت الضيفة اللي عندنا معنا اليوم هي ضيفة خاصة، هي لا فونداتريس يعني المؤسسة ديال جمعية دوار تيك، واللي غادي تشارك معنا المسار ديالها، وعندنا بزاف الحويجات اللي غادي نتعلموهم منها اليوم. كان نطلب منكم ترحبوا معايا مع هناء بزاف. مرحبا بك هناء معنا اليوم.
الله يبارك فيك.
شكرا بزاف انك لبيتي الدعوه ديالنا وخديتي من وقتك باش تلاقاي مع بنيتات اللي هما العائله ديال دوار تيك.
مالهم. شكرا. over to me.
Yes.
Okay. سميتي هنا مؤسسة جمعية دوار تيك. الحصة اللي غادي نديرو اليوم غادي تكون بالانجليزية وبالدارجة، وبغيتكم كلكم تحسوا براسكم يعني تقدروا تسولوني السؤال اللي بغيتو. غادي تعاوني أميمة وغادي يعاونوني الناس ديال ليكيب، حيت بعض المرات واحد الكلمات التقنيات ما عنديش في الدارجه، ولكن حتى نخدم كثر في الانجليزيه والفرنسيه. ولكن المهم لو بلوز امبورطون most importantly كل واحد يحس براسو we're family, we're together، وحنا هنايا اليوم باش نتعلموا من بعضياتنا. I've prepared a presentation, and it's actually a presentation that I've done a few weeks back that I've shared with people in Canada about digital inclusion. وبغيت هي الاندماج الرقمي. I want to share this presentation with you because I think it's important notions, and it's gonna help me a little bit share the story of why I chose to do what I did, and why is it that we're doing what we're doing with Douar Tech. So I think I have the right to share my screen. Yes, I'm gonna be sharing my screen, and I'm gonna show you the presentation. And just as a rule, because I'm gonna be seeing the presentation, أميمة إلا قدرتي تعاونيني في هذا الشيء، إلا كان شي سؤال ولا شي حاجة just unmute the person or unmute yourself so I can hear because I'm going to be watching the presentation. Okay. So I'm actually sharing this full screen, and I hope you see all of it. So the theme is building tech inclusivity in Africa and the experience of Douar Tech. Why is it that I want you to see the bigger picture and see how Douar Tech is part of something that is way larger than itself? A lot of times in Morocco, in particular in North Africa, we tend to kind of overlook the continent. احنا مغربيين. We don't speak of ourselves as Africans. And I think it's a mistake. I think we should look at ourselves in the diversity of our roots and in our anchorage in a continent that is very rich in thoughts, in projects, and also that is the way people think about it is the continent of the 21st century. So I hope that with this presentation and with sharing a little bit of my experience, we can discuss a little bit how we as Moroccan women and entrepreneurs, what we share with the rest of the continent and what we can bring to the continent. So like I said, my name is Hana Bezad. I'm an expert in innovation, science, technology, and entrepreneurship in Africa. My passion is very much discovering and supporting entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs in particular, and seeing how tech solutions can contribute to human and social and economic development challenges facing Africa today. قريت هنايا كبرت في الرباط، من بعد مشيت لفرنسا، كان عندي بورس من الغوفرنمون فرنسي، وقريت في باريس، I did a dual degree, so Sciences Po and math and physics. حيت مي بديت كانت في راسي بأن ما كنتش باغي ناخذ شي حاجة اللي it's gonna restrict me. I wanted to explore various fields, pluridisciplinary approaches, because I felt like this is where I want to expand. I want to open my mind to many different spaces. Also, I think growing up in Morocco and alhamdulillah being surrounded with people that had a certain expertise in medicine and education and so on, I also felt like I wanted to be able to speak to all experts so that no one will hold kind of an expertise ahead, and I can mix and develop understanding in between spaces of knowledge. So من باريس مشيت للولايات المتحدة. It had always been my dream. As you know, the US can be expensive, but I had my scholarship from the French government, so I did this exchange program عام من بعد رجعت لفرنسا, and then I did a dual degree program again, public and corporate management, and on top of it I did law. So I studied a lot, but I loved it. And the reason why I studied a lot, and I think this is perhaps something I have in common with a lot of you, is that I felt like, you know, this is my chance. I have a scholarship. It's 3 years, and then in the end, it was 5 years. So 5 years in total of being financially independent. So I said, I'm going to make the most out of it. I'm going to study as much as I can. And the reason why I did it also is because I had many conversations with my mother about the importance of school. My mom is a French teacher, French literature professor, and her mom, so my grandmother, was illiterate. And I think a lot of us have mothers or grandmothers that did not have the chance to go to school. On my dad's side, my grandmother was in the first kind of generation to hold positions, and she was a director of a school. So education was always very important. So for me, like studying as much as I could and sharing as much knowledge as I could was very, very important to me. So that was it. And then from my dual degrees, I also started working aside because, as you know, Paris is expensive. So I needed to work aside, but also I wanted to develop my professional network already. So I gave classes at Sciences Po. One of the classes I gave, and I have great memories of it, is to Japanese students who were coming to Paris to study about European studies. And then I also started doing some consulting work. And then from this consulting work, I moved to digital transformation. And then from digital transformation, I was also writing articles about entrepreneurship and what was going on in the MENA region. MENA is Middle East, North Africa, and I should call it SWANA, Southwest Asia, North Africa. So to decolonize a little bit the vocabulary. At some point, and I think this is the most important thing, كنت عشت في باريس واحد 10 سنين، والحياة في باريس ما نكذبش عليكم، الحياة في باريس ملي تخدمي مزيان وقريتي مزيان هي حياة جميلة جدا، يعني في البنات خصوصا البنات. ولكن كان عندي شي حلم من المغرب، ومع كان توفى الوالد in 2012 كانت بقات عندي هاد this willingness. I wanted to do something from Morocco, but I felt quite disconnected from Morocco after a decade. And I felt fear. I honestly felt fear because I was like, actually, I'm very autonomous, very independent. I work a lot, but I think I'm happy to be independent. Will I lose it if I go back to Morocco? But then I thought, you know, I see my friends, some of them are starting their companies and it's great. But for me, if I start a company, خاصني نجيب شي حاجة للبلاد. So what I did, I had an assignment with my job. And then at the end of the assignment, I told them, I want to go study again. I want to learn how to code. But I don't want to go like 5 years again. I want to do a boot camp. I found one. And I took 2 months off. And I went to Barcelona and did this boot camp. It was new at the time, 9 weeks, but it was already known, Le Wagon. So it had a good reputation. So I did the boot camp. Had the boot camp. Same that happened in my studies happened in this boot camp. I was like, wow, I'm discovering a new field, people from everywhere. We were 14 people. There were 10 nationalities. Some people had traveled the world, and it was intense. It was a boot camp. We worked a lot, but I started coding, and we did an application at the end, and I was like, this is wonderful. We need this. It's powerful, but we need this for people that think impact, that think community. Because to be honest, and this is something for you to keep in mind, I felt like this is something that is brought to an elite that is paying $5,000 for this. And a lot of the projects were not as impactful as they could be. So I thought, if we shape a program a little bit like I had seen in Paris. In Paris, I was in the board of a social incubator called Led by Her. And Led by Her is a very special incubator. They help women that have suffered violence. And I'm sure many of you know women that have suffered violence around you, because statistically we have a lot in Morocco. And I myself, when I came across this project, I thought of many people that I had known that were close to me that unfortunately had faced this challenge, which is unfortunate. But entrepreneurship helped, and the community helped them change their life completely. So I thought maybe if we could do something a little bit like Led by Her, but with technology, and without necessarily targeting women that have suffered violence, but targeting a lot more people that suffer injustice. حيث مع الأسف عندنا في المغرب بزاف ديال الظروف اللي كيمنعوا الناس والبنات، خصوصا البنات we have someone with the mic.
Just meet her. Yeah.
Thanks. So sometimes in Morocco, a lot of times, unfortunately, we have a lot of conditions, circumstances that stop people from developing their potential. And I think a lot of the young people understand it and know it. So yeah, this was the start. It was in end 2017. Then I left Paris, left my job. Big leap of faith. I can tell you it's hard, because when you've built like your life day to day, you know, like when you're an immigrant, it's you build up your life. So when you have to leave that behind, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And most of my friends were like, are you sure? But I had this intuition, I had this envy, and I did it. And a few months later, so I traveled a little bit. I traveled in Latin America. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I think if I can share how things got together and how some experiences can help you, traveling can help you. If you have a chance to travel on your own in places where you don't, you know, whenever people would tell you, are you sure you're going to be on your own? Especially as a woman, the world seems like very unsafe. It's not true. You can travel, and you should travel if you have a chance, and you can build it yourself. So anyway, I traveled in Latin America. I found projects that were inspiring a little bit, a bit like what I wanted to do. I did my research, and then I came back that summer 2017. And I was like, I had negotiated the franchise. So I negotiated with the founders in Paris, the franchise for Le Wagon, and the project Douar Tech. I had started to shape it. And that's it. We started there. I didn't know a lot of people. Of course, you would say, yes, I went to a French school here, so it helps a little bit, the network, human capital. But the reality is, in 10 years, I didn't develop. So, I mean, I was quite disconnected from Morocco, and I wasn't, and I started on my own. Like I didn't have like financial capital to bring in. It was just my work. And my capacity to negotiate, which is cool. And then I started the 2 projects. And Le Wagon, I started with the hope that I could shift the business model. And Douar Tech, it was very experimental because Saraha, I hadn't traveled so much in rural areas, a little bit, but I had everything to learn. So that's how it started. And Douar Tech had clearly, from the very beginning, the intention to do what we mentioned earlier, indimaj al-raqmi, digital inclusion. And it was very crucial. Intuitively, I could say it was very crucial. So I'm going to give you a few definitions here, and I think it's important that you have them in mind. What is digital inclusion? There is an official definition, and you can find it here. It's even an organization that is called Digital Inclusion. Their website is digitalinclusion.org. They give a definition with 5 elements. The digital inclusion refers to the activities necessary to ensure that all individuals and communities, including the most disadvantaged, have access to and use of information and communication technologies, ICT. So this includes 5 elements: affordable and robust broadband internet service, internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the users, access to digital literacy training, quality technical support, and applications and online content designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. Then they say, digital inclusion requires intentional strategies and investments to reduce and eliminate historical, institutional, and structural barriers to access and use technology. The reason why I'm sharing this is because I want you to understand and deconstruct a little bit the environment that is perhaps yours. When we think of internet, big revolution, massive revolution, the 4th industrial revolution, they call it, etc. Internet is a major shift for us. I think we all remember, I remember the 90s, the first use of internet and so on. Social media starting in 2007, the iPhone, same thing, smartphones starting in 2007. How on earth today is it possible that someone doesn't use internet or doesn't know how to use internet for the best? And we all know people around us that are not so comfortable, and they don't, if they are illiterate, how are they going to use internet? Even though sometimes they do, they use WhatsApp, they use a little bit of YouTube somehow. But to me, and to a lot of people actually, especially I think during the context of the pandemic, we've all understood that this is a fundamental right. We're talking about the same level of crucial supply as electricity or safe water. Internet connects us. And when you don't have a safe access to the public space because there is a disease, because there's a pandemic, you need information. So you need internet. For that, you need infrastructure. You need telecom companies like Maroc Telecom to give you access affordable. When I say affordable, alhamdulillah, في المغرب, we have somehow affordable access to internet, 4G. It's okay, it's not too expensive. But I can tell you that sub-Saharan Africa, in some countries, to pay the data, 1 minute sometimes costs them like 100 dirhams. So if they have to work online, it's unaffordable. And it's an investment. You need to have a smartphone. You need to have, and when you have it, for instance, our generation, perhaps we're more comfortable. My mom's generation, she's 70. Well, no, we have to explain and that this is an application that if you put this information, etc., it's stored here and there. We need to have digital literacy. We need to have support, and we need to have this, I love, content that is designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. To me, internet is a wonderful tool because it's about autonomy. And we say autonomy, it's about freedom. And when we say about freedom, it's about the ultimate power of a citizen. You know, you are, as a person, you're perhaps the sister, the mother, the wife of someone, but you are a unique human being with your history and your power to impact the community and your power to share knowledge and participate in discussions and collaborate with others, with creatives, with entrepreneurs, and so on. Internet gives you this space, and it's a new land. It's a land that is not so new now, but it's a land that you can potentially have ideals like democracy fulfilled. But that doesn't come naturally. It comes with intentions, because the reality is a lot of the inequalities and injustices that we see in the world are replicated on the internet. And I think you all somehow experienced this. You perhaps have had the sad experience of being bothered or harassed or molested on the streets. And on the internet, you will have someone bothering you and harassing you and insulting you, even as a woman in particular in our context. So to be able to prevent these situations, we have to educate people on how to use internet properly. And we have to educate people about their rights and their obligations. So it's intentional. And we have to create platforms that move away racism, xenophobia, things that are not acceptable, misinformation, and promote the right content. So it's very intentional. Behind everything, there are human beings that are thinking and sharing ideas and making choices and using their power, their agency. This is something that I want you to remember. So another thing to keep in mind, and please feel free, questions, you know.
انا غير نسولهم واش كاين سؤال، حيت شفت واحد البنيتات رافعين يديهم. ندى، كان عندك شي سؤال؟ اذا عندكم شي سؤال ولا شي مداخله عافاكم رفعوا يديكم باش نعطيكم
باللغه اللي بغيتو.
اللغه اللي مرتاحين فيها، فرونسي، لونجلي ولا بالدارجه. I think we're good.
Okay. So we talked about digital inclusion, okay? Digital inclusion, we said 5 pillars, intentional strategies. Now, we need, this is a concept, but in this concept, there are actors. So it's about an ecosystem of people, of actors. And so I want to give you this other definition of digital inclusion ecosystem. It's a combination of programs and policies that meet a geographic community's unique and diverse needs. It's about coordinating entities that work together in an ecosystem to address all the aspects of the digital divide. So there are 2 aspects: existence of programs and policies addressing all the aspects of the digital divide, so the 5 points that we saw, and collaboration, the quality of collaboration, entities providing local digital inclusion services, policymakers, advocates, social service providers, community leaders co-create solutions in partnership with the community. So now you have kind of a definition that gives you the qualitative aspect of how we can make digital inclusion happen and effective. It's about programs, it's about policies, and it's about collaboration. Douar Tech, as much as we were perhaps in the context of Morocco, the first kind of organization that specifically addressed the digital divide between rural and urban areas, and we'll talk more about it. We are part of a value chain. There are incubators, accelerators, other programs from the public service, corporates that do corporate innovation. There's the public service like, OFPPT, ANAPEC, and those people are here, and everyone needs to be able to understand and assess their effectiveness and their mission. We, as Douar Tech, want to work together with everyone, including policymakers, including social service providers, community leaders, and you, ladies, are the community leaders. So for us doing this program with the US Embassy, AWE for You, we are exactly doing what we want to be doing, which is bringing a certain expertise, human capital, support to helping you co-create solutions for your communities. So those are kind of like the two definitions that I wanted to give. And the reason why it's important, and now again, to give a little bit of context. So digital divide in Africa. Digital divide is everywhere. Keep it in mind. North, south, east, west. Western countries have digital divide. They have digital divide between urban and rural areas. They have digital divide. It's mostly that, to be honest. But a little bit of divide between men and women depends on the countries, but mostly like rural and urban areas. Now in Africa, and Africa, usually we think about it like North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. I don't like this. I personally would like to have more like different sort of regional segmentations, but this is the data. This is how we can, share data that is given to us. So if we think North Africa, so Middle East, North Africa, we take mobile broadband subscriptions. It's about 60%. Mobile penetration rates more than 100%. I think Morocco, it's more than 125. It was back in 2018, 2019 as well, with a study by Orange. So people have, they have smartphones. Usually they have access to internet. That's good. Now, whether they know how to use it or not, it's a different story. For Sub-Saharan Africa, it's a different story. Mobile internet adoption is about 26%. It's in many countries, it's very expensive. And there is a gender gap that is very large, and there is rural-urban gap that is very large. So it's hard. So eventually it's very hard on women, and it's harder on rural women. And I think you can see it, those realities. It's in your communities. And at the same time, it's the most powerful tool that we have today to perhaps help them change in one generation the deal. In one generation, perhaps someone can make a business that's going to be helping their entire community and reach perhaps the security for his family and for the next generation. It's possible. It's the promise of internet. Not systematic, but it's possible. And even beyond like money and security, it's about access to knowledge that should be a human right. Today, and I think you saw it during the pandemic, universities that were Ivy universities, those are universities that I was dreaming of when I was a child. Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Yale, all of them have content that is accessible on the internet. Not everything is free, but a lot of it. And you have Coursera, you have Khan Academy, you have amazing platforms that if you are curious, you are working hard, you have access to internet, wherever you are in the world, and you can dedicate this time to study, you can study about anything. Cryptocurrency, psychology, anthropology, anything. It is a magnificent source of power that everyone needs to understand how to use. Let's see. Yeah. Challenges that African tech entrepreneurs face. And I think you will relate to this, but I'm giving you this as a commonality of all African entrepreneurs, so you can understand that you and I are just part of something way bigger than us. So there's this thing called I4Policy. It's innovation for policy. It was initially a movement of hub leaders, and it became a foundation. And the purpose of I4Policy was to develop a methodology to take from the best practices, like what Tunisia has done with their Startup Act, and help ecosystems in many countries in Africa and elsewhere in the world in the future develop a context, a legal framework that is favorable. And they've identified those challenges that us entrepreneurs, كل المقاولين, we face. And the first one, I think you'll understand, culture. احنا عندنا في المغرب شوية تبدلت، ولكن en général باش تكون مقاول ماشي كي بحال تكون طبيب ولا تكون it's not the same. Your family wants you to have a safe future, so tech entrepreneur for now it's still not safe. It doesn't mean much. So the support that we can find is difficult. When I started, and alhamdulillah, she changed a lot, she helped me a lot, but my mother did not want me to do what I was doing. She was like, first of all, I want you to go back to France, or you're going to go back eventually. I don't think you're going to stay. And why are you taking those risks? You know, you just want to find a job and be paid. And it's normal. It's understandable. Entrepreneurship can be hard. It's investments. Then specifically for women, I think, and especially I think in North Africa, the statistics show, and in Morocco in particular, only 10% of CEOs and managers are women. Even if we have a lot of female engineers, it's in Sub-Saharan Africa, when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's about 25% of women. But it's because they take like individual entrepreneurs that sell like fruits and vegetables and things like this. So it changes a little bit the statistics. Anyway, we don't have enough female entrepreneurs, period. It goes even beyond this when it comes to finance. Pre-seed finance. When we say pre-seed, you know, like you have many stages. Now those usually pre-seed is like 20, 30, 50,000 USD. That is in big tech spaces. But حنايا في المغرب we have even 10,000 dirhams, 30,000 dirhams can be complicated sometimes. Venture capital, access to capital market when the company grows. This is tech, we're talking big tech. احنا في المغرب, and even in Africa in general, we're lagging behind. Morocco is not first. Morocco is lagging behind Nigeria, lagging behind South Africa, behind Egypt. So we have lessons to learn. Human capital. When you say human capital, it's people. Do they have the right expertise, techniques? It's hard. It's very hard to find the exact... When you start building a team, you don't necessarily find the talents that you find in more mature spaces. Another one that you'll know, governance. Everything, you know, the permits. If you have a problem with your contracts, احنا في المغرب إلى شي واحد بحال دابا درتي معاه ان كونطرا، إلا ما كانش دار الخدمة وكنتي خلصتيه، ولا كان شي 5000 درهم بحال دابا، ما تقدرش تمشي للقاضي، ولكن غادي تخلص بزاف عليه. So of course a lot of entrepreneurs just give up because it's too complicated, because they don't have the financial solidity for it. Bankruptcy, we have احنا في l'équipe في Douar Tech, احنا on a في le board, Ismail, who's our treasurer, he worked for a company that went bankrupt, and he helped the process. It was a nightmare. He spent like months going back and forth, Tribunal de Commerce, etc. So it's complicated. Paying taxes is complicated. Knowing exactly your taxes as an NGO is complicated. Intellectual property is complicated. When we say intellectual property, for instance, you developed a specific technique and you want to register it. It's intellectual property. ولكن حنايا في المغرب, again, if you have to go to OMPIC, and a lot of times they don't have the right, it's lagging behind. So this is governance, and this is sometimes a challenge for African entrepreneurs. Yes, Hasna, you have a question? I see you have put something on the presentation. If you have a question, feel free.
اللي عندكم شي سؤال تقدروا تطرحوه. حنا دابا كان سي احمد كنكتبوا شويه ديال الترجمه في الشات بوكس، ولا ما كان شي حاجه واضحه تقدروا تسولونا باش نقدروا نشرحوها اكثر. شكرا. حسنا، اذا كانت عندك شي مداخله عافاك كنسمعوك.
Okay, so then we'll continue. Two other challenges that are very important: infrastructure. When we say infrastructure, digital infrastructure is part of it. Like I said, in Morocco, we have the 4G and it's great, but we don't have the 5G. If you go to the United States and you connect with your phone, you have the 5G, it's way faster. Some countries are working on the 6G. So there is a gap. Some places in rural areas, of course, you don't have the 4G. So access to internet is important, and logistics can be a challenge. And then you have access to markets. If you think about it, Morocco, as much as it's our country, it's a very fragmented market, very fragmented. So Fatima will take your question. I'll just finish my point. So for instance, if you have an innovation and you want to sell it to your market goal is 5 million people, will you find 5 million people in Morocco, just in Morocco? Depends on what you're doing, depends on the price. It's very complicated. If we had access to the whole Maghreb, with Algeria, with Tunisia, it would be a different story. So this is something, because a lot of countries in Africa are fragmented and it's hard. You have taxes, you have ديوان باش تمشي من هاد البلاد لهاد البلاد، السلعة باش تمشي بحال دابا المالي ولا it can be complicated. So those are the challenges. So go ahead please فاطمة، السؤال ديالك.
بداس فاطمة، ممكن تطرحي السؤال ديالك؟
Yeah.
Go ahead, we hear you.
Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Mrs. or just Mina in contact. Do you hear me?
Fatima, I'm sorry, we don't hear you so well. إلا قدرتي تكتبي السؤال يمكن حيت ما تنسمعوكش مزيان. This is digital infrastructure, for instance. It happens to me, and it happened to me last year when I was in Kigali.
Exactly. Sorry. So I want to here we talk about the Morocco context or the MENA region context between for those challenges.
So you want to make the difference between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa in those challenges?
Yeah.
I think we can go a lot more in details. I mean, honestly, we can talk for hours about this. There are tons of reports, and I can pinpoint a few reports to you. My point here was to say these are challenges that African tech entrepreneurs with their representatives have come together to identify as common challenges. Now, I can tell you from my experience, So I did my business in Morocco. I also lived in Kigali last year. I worked with Smart Africa. I worked for 31 African governments. I can tell you a little bit of the difference and give you examples. Culture, for instance. In some countries, becoming an entrepreneur is now promoted. Ghana, Nigeria, definitely. South Africa, Egypt, definitely. Rwanda, definitely. Female entrepreneurship is very common in Nigeria, very common in Ghana. In Rwanda, the government is very, in Rwanda, you have the parliament. I know it's not entrepreneurship, but it's important. The parliament in Rwanda has 60% of female representatives. Most of the key positions are taken by female. And I think it's radical change from us. Now we have a new government in Morocco and we have parity in the government, and it's great. But this is something we're kind of like, finally. And a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa are kind of ahead of us, and they're going to pass us very quickly, for sure. Finance, pre-seed finance, a lot of the finance that goes to African ecosystem goes to Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, and then South Africa, and then Egypt. So Morocco compares to Rwanda. And to me, of course, I'm like, wow, Rwanda is a small country, 12 million inhabitants, has a history of like 27 years ago, it was the genocide and everything. And now they managed to be about $12 million put in their ecosystem, and it's about the same amount in Morocco. And they even have more hubs. And I'm like, okay, but this because it's the result of intentional policy and intentional strategies, because for them, it's become a priority. And to me, Morocco is moving, but too slow. Human capital, I think North Africa wins for sure. We have a lot more diversity in our human capital. A lot of countries in the South envy us. Yeah, it's like that. I think Western Africa, when it comes to Nigeria is 100 million people. The diaspora, when you see them, they are in the US, they are in top positions in the tech space, in many, many places. Look at where Twitter did go. Twitter went to Ghana, Facebook, Nigeria. You see the IPOs, Flutterwave. You see Andela, Nigeria. So they have a lot to offer. Governance, the best countries are Île Maurice and Rwanda. But that is in terms of, now it's not used anymore. I mean, they stopped it, but the World Bank used to have this doing business index. Morocco was quite good, but now it's they stopped doing it. Still, it gave a lot of information, and yeah, you had Maurice, Rwanda, and then Morocco in terms of like security of governance. Infrastructure, definitely Morocco is top, and then South Africa. More like in terms of digital infrastructure, South Africa, they're working on 5G and stuff, even Kenya, but Morocco is top. And then when it comes to markets, well, this is surprising, but I would say the thing is with Africa, you have regions are working well together. I was based in Rwanda, and then you had the whole region that was Kenya, Tanzania was not so involved, but Uganda, and it was powerful, and it's big markets. So they work together. It's easy to travel. You have like a laissez-passer, and you can travel easily. Same for West Africa, so Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, etc. It's super easy. Plus, they speak the same language and they use the same currency. So regions work well together. Unfortunately, we in North Africa, with the problem that we have with Algeria, we are not able to tap into this. And I hope it changes, because it's a big loss for everyone. So this is what I can tell you, but if you want to dive deeper, I can pinpoint a few resources, because there's just a lot to say. It's a whole field of knowledge. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Another thing that I wanted to share with you, and then I want to make sure that we'll have enough time for questions, but this is an overview that I want you to have in mind. These are numbers from 2019. It changed a little bit, but it's still kind of a big, main items that I think you can have in mind. In Africa, you have about 620 hubs that are active. We are a hub. You have other hubs in Morocco, many hubs in Marrakech itself. You have Emerging Business Factory. We like them a lot. We're very good friends. Many hubs. Casablanca has a lot. They can be incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, maker spaces, hacker spaces, even some cultural centers are hubs, as long as they convene for innovation. Hubs build and host communities of innovators that share common values. They facilitate access to resources, skills, funding, network. And their goal is also to stimulate creativity and innovation and foster collaboration between a lot of people, between private sector, youth, government, civil society, and academia. This is why in Douar Tech, and if you speak to the team, if you sit with Umayma, for instance, Aula Faye, Aula Thana, you ask them, so what does it look like your job every day? So they're going to tell you, they speak to you guys, community leaders and beneficiaries and so on, but they also speak to Soterma, Boeing, BMW, باش نشوفوا كيف شنو هما البرامج اللي تنقدروا نديروا بيناتنا. They also speak to governments because we want the government to understand what we do and we want to help them do better what they have to do. So typically, me as well, this week, I was writing an advocacy note, like a letter from the minister to tell them, this is what we've done. This is انتم عندكم هذا النموذج الجديد لتطوير المغرب, the new model for development. So let's work together. These are our propositions. And this work is very important because we, like I said, we participate in a larger value chain, and we want to see long-term. And what the change that we want to see is systematic change. It's a system that needs to change. And we are not alone. Like I said, we have this expertise in digital inclusion. ولكن بعد الآخرين بحال دابا في كينيا كاينين الناس اللي عندهم فينتك, l'agriculture, agtech. You see that a lot. Like as you can see here, Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa are very, very advanced. But these are numbers from 2019, and please have the curiosity to go and see this website. The founder is a friend of mine. I love what they do. They do data on emerging markets, so emerging ecosystems. It's very accurate, it's very relevant, and it helps because everyone that you see here, I've shared a little bit with you the story of why I did what with Douar Tech, and we can discuss this further. But most of the people that have created an incubator accelerator are people that you just look at, you and I, like they are young people that understand that there's a challenge in their society and that innovation can solve or help solve those challenges, and they built it themselves. You know, it's not like Douar Tech, we didn't have a mandate like take, you're going to have like $1, $2, $3 million and build it. Not at all. It was a private initiative. We didn't have funding at the start. We went knocking on doors. Oh, you're going to sponsor a teacher. We started with one teacher. Everyone else, and including myself, always been a volunteer. And this is how we built over time. And of course, it's not easy because everyone has bills to pay. Everyone has a life to build. But the reason, and I think this is a key message from me to you, the reason why we all believed in what we believed in is because there is something special happening now, promising in the African continent. I think with internet and digital innovation, what we can do to change the narrative, to change from Dorov, we are underdeveloped and migration and so on, we have the capacity now to perhaps create jobs, create solutions, and at least empower people, at least tell them you have what it takes to create your company, to create activity that is revenue generating, that brings value to you and your community. And that is important. It's immense. And for me, I am a strong believer in the fact that this is the decade to do so. We have the potential, we have the capacity, but we also have almost like an obligation to do it, because we don't want to kind of like miss an appointment with history. It's the moment. And I think for women in particular, when I built my company in Casablanca, I called it Hazara. I called it Izara Tech. And the reason why I called it Hazara is because my grandmother, so my mom's mom, used to call me Hazara for nothing, just because I used to like chat with people. But to me, I called it Hazara because I wanted to honor my grandmother, because my grandmother would have so loved to go to the universities I went to and to have the freedom that I have and have the capacity to create a company and generate revenue and speak to people just like I do. And to me, I feel like it's a historical, let's say, rehabilitation of their power. They were very powerful women. That's not a question. They were very powerful, but the society and patriarchy kind of restricted their role. And so they were just at home, and they were, every time we were like, no freedom, no. So you have to take care of the kids. You are married at 12, da, da, da. And now I think we have a chance to decide for ourselves and to create conditions that are good for us, for our families, for our partners, for men and women alike, so that everyone kind of grows together better, feels comfortable, feels in their authenticity. And I think this is also a key message that I want to tell you. Everything is, I mean, it's holistic. The way you are as an entrepreneur is you as a person, whether you're going to be honest or dishonest, whether you're going to be demanding or kind of lazy, whether, you know, it's the expression of who you are. And so it's the expression of your ethics. And all of this combined, you can take it to the highest expression of yourself. And all of us entrepreneurs doing what we do to the best, to the very maximum, collaborating, sharing knowledge, sharing resources, having trust with each other, we elevate the level and then we move ahead. And then, yes, the government will kind of understand, oh, there's something going on, let's catch up. Private sector is going to put money in and so on. But the values are very important. And for me, this is very much why I love what's happening with tech hubs in Africa. So, questions? If not, I'll give you a little bit of Douar Tech, and then I think we still have 30 minutes, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to discuss, chat, share anecdotes if need be.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I think we have a question from Amal. So I've sent it to you as a direct message. السؤال ديالها هو what are the positives and beneficial ways that have great impact on community?
I think first of all, it's the very fact that you ask yourself this question is like we say, performative. It's important to ask yourself this question. Sometimes some people don't ask themselves the question. Sometimes they want to be entrepreneurs to make money and that's it. You know, I just want to make money and be safe. And it's fine, I'm not judging. But we can do even more. And it starts with intentions. What is it that I want to bring to my community? So I think, first of all, understanding your mission, your why, why is it that you wake up in the morning and do the work that you do? For me, this Douar Tech was about education. It was about meritocracy. Sometimes in my life, I've had difficult moments. I've had my sister, Lahma, who had cancer, and she passed away and she was young, and it was difficult for my family. And then I had ambition, but I was kind of left behind because my parents were having a hard time. And so my scholarship for me was very important. I really wanted to be independent and successful. And so I really held on to it. So I was thankful and in gratitude that I had this chance, and that some people believed in the work that I do, in my potential. And I remember my teachers, and I remember the conversations that I've had with them. And then a few years later, my dad also passed away, and it was very hard. And in the meantime, I had seen my parents. So my mom is a teacher, my dad was a doctor, and both of them really dedicated their lives to their communities, doing projects, even when they were down. So I had this inspiration, but I also saw that sometimes me as their daughter, I was not like privileged. And I would compare myself. I was in French school, so like a lot of people were well off and were not bothered. And I was like, this is fair, not fair, I don't know. But I focused on my studies, and I focused on the opportunities that I was given. And from there, what I take away is that the chances that I was given, I want to make sure that everyone has them as much as I can. So honestly, what makes me super happy is when I somehow manage to help someone else. Somehow. It doesn't mean it's through a program. I have a friend from Rwanda. She went to Paris. She's lost. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like the racism and everything. I have a few contacts. Maybe they're going to help her find an internship, and she's going to be in a better environment. Another friend of mine, she studied well, but she hasn't been working for 2 years. She's kind of lost. She doesn't know what to do. And I'm like, I'm going to have this conversation with you, because maybe if we share a little bit, you're going to clarify your path. And honestly, I really feel like for me, this is where I find myself. This is where I'm like, oh, it's so worth it. And it's not me. To be honest, it's not me. It's like, yes, I managed to build a little bit of human capital. I know my network, my friends, my acquaintances, people I met in trainings and everything. But if I can connect, I create value, and it's easy for me. And this is how, I mean, to me, like, I see it again as holistic, and I give a lot of spiritual meaning to my mission, but this is how I feel connected to life. And I feel like my call back in 2017, and I wrote this article, and I'm happy to share it with you. You can find it on Medium if you'd like. But I was like, I look back 10 years I lived 10 years in Europe. I did a lot of things, and sometimes I worked much more than any of my peers, and sometimes you see, I'm just the good Arab. They see me as the good Arab, and they want to kind of take advantage of my work, and it's not fair. And I feel it's not fair. But to me, I was like, okay, wake up call. Reality is, I get excited when I hear about a project, an aspiration, and I help turn it into something real, because we need it. Because you and I and everyone needs everyone to be at their full potential. We don't need people to feel restricted. We don't need people, my mom, for instance, she's a wonderful writer. She kept on telling me for years and years, oh, I'd love to write, but I can't, my mind is blurry, I have too much to do. So she eventually never wrote a book, and I feel so sad. I want her to write a book, because everyone could benefit from it. Everyone could sit there and read and understand the complexity of her mind, how she articulates things. To me, this is what I love to do. I love to help people just getting there and doing it, activating. So yeah, so I feel like when you have this intention and this aspiration, ask yourself questions at all time, just to be consistent. Why is it that the thing that I'm doing? What's the mission? How can I clearly define it? How am I going to do it? Okay. When I do it, do I do it right? Is it consistent with the why at every step? How can I do to make it better? From this thought process, it's almost like philosophical approach to entrepreneurship. Then you reach your goal.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We have a second question from Jamila Hadi. So the question is, what are the main obstacles for Moroccan women to start their own business and be independent, or to travel and try to prove themselves?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say there's nothing to prove. Get rid of it. And I tell you by experience, because I worked on myself to get rid of this. When I was younger, when I was 17, I wanted to prove myself. I went to universities, I went to HEC, and I was like, it's not enough to be in HEC. I've never done like sports at the competitive level. Let me do rowing, and I'm going to be doing rowing. And I did rowing, and we did the competitions at the national level in France and so on. I proved myself, and it was wonderful. It's good. A certain time in your life, you need it. But over time, and when you grow up, it's not what keeps you awake and passionate. You understand that you have nothing to prove to anyone. Yourself, you don't have to prove to your mother, your father. It's so, like you've completed this part. Now it's something else. It's you and yourself. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling in alignment? Then you're good. And so to answer the questions on the challenges, I think it's a lot of the challenges that we mentioned earlier, but it's very acute challenges, because when we say culture, culture is heavy. Culture is everything. Culture is what you're going to be interacting. Culture is in the eyes of the people that see you and say, why is she coming to this, to do this procedure? Like, what is she doing here? She doesn't belong here. Go back home. And they don't even have to say it. They think it. You see it in their eyes, and you feel like you shrink. Or, oh, but you have this and that obligation, or we're going to ask you questions as if you have to prove to everyone, but how are you going to do with kids? How are you going to do with this? You know, you feel like you don't fit in. Now, the reason why I say so is because I don't think we have to get rid of culture altogether. This doesn't exist. Or blame culture entirely. I think we have to be selective. I think we have enormous powers in our culture, in Moroccan culture, for women, and we need to tap onto this rather than the rest. Like I said earlier, I'm thinking about my grandmother, both of them, and I've seen them powerful women. Just they were restricted at a time where culture did not allow them to do everything they wanted to do, or their aspiration and everything. But now culture can be, you know, the love that you have for your family and how they are proud at the end. It's very tricky. It's very tricky in Morocco. Sometimes your closest people are going to be the ones that are the most challenging, because they act out of fear instead of out of love. And what you bring, they fear that it's impacting their comfort zone. But if you succeed a little bit, then they're going to respect you. They're going to admire you. And that's what I see now when I go sometimes, and, you know, family and everything, they're like, wow, I like what you're doing. Congratulations. It's great. But a few years back, they were lost. They were not sure, and they would question, and how is she going to make a living? And, it's not here. Like, she would go back to Europe. It's better for her. Culture changes. Culture is organic. It's dynamic. It's you and I. It's everyone. So for culture to embrace innovation, we just have to all participate and make peace with it. Honestly, make peace with it. Now I feel much more at peace with my culture, and it's hybrid, and it's composed with a lot of things. But with the component that is Moroccan, I'm super at peace, and I find it a strength more than anything. So I think there's that. Now there are practical challenges. Finance it's hard because sometimes you see in Morocco, those that succeed are those that have come from families that have given them money. But it's not always the case. Let's be honest, it's not always the case. And there's room for people that work well and hard and are honest. And there's going to be more room for it. Now, if you think about it, it's not just Morocco, unfortunately. Finance, if you take the statistics, only 2% of the funding, VC funding, goes to female-led enterprises, sometimes 3%, but too little. There's a study by Bratcher Bridges, and I encourage you to look at it. It's been published now. I think they've done this with the World Bank recently. You have to look at it to understand the reality. It's hard, the struggle is hard, but we have to keep it in mind so we understand that this needs to change. And perhaps maybe in one generation, if we work well, my daughter or your daughter, if you have one, will not experience the same challenges. And I think this is the role we need to understand. We have a role to play so that things get more fair and easier for the next generation to do a great job and to thrive. So there's definitely that. And when I say culture, just to go back to the first point, culture, it's gonna be in everything. It's gonna be in your capacity to benefit from a proper governance. Sometimes you're not gonna be treated as equal as a man because you're a woman, because you bother, you know. When I did the procedure for my company in Casablanca, for the NGO in Rabat, it was a nightmare. 4 months, you come back, no, it was a nightmare. And for me, it's like, what is this thing? Like back in France, you would type, the website is done, like 30 minutes and it's finished. But then they play with you a little bit because you don't know, because you seem like, you know, you're kind of lost. But it's something that you can, I think we have also, as much as we have challenges, we also have advantages. And I think one of the advantages that we have is our capacity to build community. If you build ties that are based on respect, it takes a little bit of time. It takes probably much more time than for men to do it, because here it's normal for them to support one another sometimes. But if you do it over time, you will gain the respect and the heart of people, and it will flow much more. So challenges at some point can reduce over time. It can change into perhaps your advantages.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We have, I think, Abdes Fatima. Abdes Fatima, can you hear me? كتسمعيني?
Yes, you said yes. Yeah. Okay, my question is, you said that there is no way, or you shouldn't have power to improve others, like our friends, our parents. There's so what we can do for an ambitious girl to endure that feeling, to improve to your parents, for example?
Yeah,
because they they need to see what you do as a girl, as an ambitious girl, passionate about, for example, entrepreneurship. It is obligatory, let's say.
Yeah. What I said, it's not that you can't change, or what I said is that you don't have to prove to anyone else but you that you are in line with what you do. Now, the question of your environment is, of course, key. You have to gain trust of the people so that they reflect back the trust to you, and then you can move ahead and focus on your job. I think what I said is that it shouldn't be your main driver. It's strategic and tactical, but it shouldn't be your main driver, because else you're just going to fit in. You're going to do what they expect you to do, and that's it. When you are able to clearly define your ambition and clearly define why you're doing what you're doing and why it's important to you, and why it's consistent with your system of values, then you become extremely powerful and you become necessarily a role model. Because reality is all of us have doubts. All of us think a little bit less of ourselves. All of us think, I'm not going to be able to do it. Even myself, like I can tell you, like this year has been a challenge for me. I decided to leave Smart Africa for many reasons. Leave Rwanda, come back to Morocco, and then I felt like, but I had a plan to, live as an expat in Africa and do a few things. So, and I was tired and I was a little bit burnt out and I had my doubts and I didn't feel like I was myself anymore. And I felt like, oh my God, this little thing that is not a success, that feels like a challenge. For instance, a partner canceled on us in May, if you remember, Umeima, and I took it personally and it was hard. But I think what helped me was effectively, like my support system that I had built over time, because they had seen me so passionate and so involved and so ethical about my work for so long, that they were like, hey, you need a little push now. So we're going to be here for you to have a conversation, to think about something else, to expand your horizons. But what I'm saying is that it's all about values at the end. It's all about values. Your parents love you. Your community will love you. Your friends love you. And if they don't do it the right way, it's probably because you need to move on and not neglect them or despise them, but it's just life brings you what you need. You need a support system and you need people that lift you up. This is extremely important, and this is a lesson that I've only learned through time with my endeavors. In Morocco, sometimes, you be friends with everyone, and also you're thought to be a good girl, so you're going to be respectful of everyone and you want to please everyone. It can be detrimental sometimes, because reality is you want real friendships. You want authenticity, you want honesty, you want support. That is what's important. When you become an entrepreneur, it's a massive learning curve of emotional intelligence for life, because you're going to have hard times. You are going to have hardships. You are going to have moments where you break down and you feel like it's not working out, or it's too slow, or you've lost money, or it can be hard. And so you become selective. That is a natural process, and you have to make peace with it. But I think you become an inspiration if that is, it's not an ambition in itself. You necessarily become an inspiration when you push it to your very maximum of who you are, not in terms of, I'm going to work 14 hours a day. No, in terms of, I did my best and I'm doing my best every day. And every day I'm showing up with courage, with resilience, with grace, with openness, with the capacity to learn and share. That is the bulk of it. And, at the end, it's all energy. So if you put this intention and you would do it every day and you do it every day, then you become it, and people feel it and understand from your conversations, from what you do, from what you're able to achieve. But what I'm saying is that sometimes the journey is longer than you think. Sometimes the universe has a plan, but follow your guts, follow your intuition, follow your highest path, and stick to the best expression of the systems of values.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I think we have a question from Tlaitmes from the first edition ديال
Hi, Tlaitmes.
أكاديمية نساء المقاولات. Tlaitmes, do you hear us?
Yes, I can. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Hannah, Ahmed, the girls. Oh my God. خلوها البنات في بغيت نسقط باش نعاود السكن. No, it's an incredible honor to be amongst you girls, and it's always like powerful to hear you, listen to you, Hannah, speaking. And I think the question that Fatim Zahra asked, I can resonate with, like, it resonated with me a lot in terms of, as you said, Hannah, it's like you don't have necessarily to prove anything to your environment. And I like in my own journey with, auto-entrepreneur and just like diving into entrepreneurship in general, my father wasn't aware, and, like he didn't have the full picture of why I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And for some time, I felt like I needed to let him know, like, this is all for my independence, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually I just gave that up and just decided to delve into entrepreneurship as my way of finding that voice and, empowering myself and letting, I think, my work speak for itself, like they say. And alhamdulillah, like I've been able to do that. And, like you get to build the image. And I will just build up on something you said, Hannah, of you get to be the inspiration. And like in my experience now, if my youngest sister wants to follow lead and do auto-entrepreneur or anything else, have her own project, whatever, I know for sure that my father like looks up at me and says, okay, she did what she did. And, she pursued her dreams and stuff like that. So my sister will be able to do that. And you really hit a nerve when you talked about support system. And I cannot just stress on how the EWE, the Academy for Women's Entrepreneurship, has been the most powerful, empowering, dynamic. Like I can give you list all of the most, positive adjectives that exist in the dictionary, and it would still fall short of describing how it's not only me who says this, but like all the girls with in our first edition, it was a lift up moment for every single one of us. It was a turn, I would say a turning point in our professional life, but also in our personal life. And if there's anything I would want to say to the girls of this edition, please make sure to create those bonds. And, you have the best team ever, like Umayma, Faye, Mohammed, Hana, and Ahmed, Lamia. You're so lucky. You're going to see it. You're going to be able to experience it. The guests, everything. Make sure to, to connect and to just build that support system for yourself, because as Hannah mentioned, you're going to need it. You're going to, you're going to really want somebody to reassure you. And up to this very moment, we're still facing our own, shortcomings and our own problems with our projects. And some of us are still changing their ideas, etc. But knowing that you can reach out, for example, to your peer mentor, which is awesome. You're going to see, I don't want to burn stuff for you. So, you could just text any of the girls and reach out to the Douar Tech team and to the, the ecosystem that you get to create. And yeah, it's a life-changing experience for me. It has been, and it's still. So just make sure that you live by what Hannah mentioned. It's so incredible how, you resume a lot when you talked about, values. And I think authenticity and resilience, I have this personal relationship with resilience as a powerful value that enables you to keep going no matter what. So girls, make sure to, to seize the opportunity and, have fun, have fun learning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sleitmes, for this wonderful testimonial. Have fun. I think it's a very important message. We think about entrepreneurship and we talk about entrepreneurship as this hard journey. Yes, there are hardships, but come on. You're taking this leap of faith because you actually want to feel alive, and you want to feel your contribution, and you want to feel your agency and your power to perhaps change the world. So it's immense. Have fun, enjoy it, feel the joy inside of it. Now, I want to also kind of tell you a few things. The pressure that you might feel at the start of your journey, it's a pressure that is very specific to entrepreneurship, but it's also pressure that women feel all the time. Women in every walks of life never think they're never enough. I want to share, perhaps most of you are in your 20s. I am 32. A lot of my friends have made choices now to start a family, etc. And so sometimes they question whether they can build a business and have a family, or if they have to give up, or if they're going to be adequate, etc. I want to tell you that it's all up to you, and your decisions are the best decisions that you can make in their due time. I have a friend of mine. She's a friend now. She was a student at Le Wagon in Casablanca. She's an engineer. She studied abroad. She came back. She started a project. Took a little bit of time. It's called ep.1. And I reached out to her just a couple of days ago. And she said, you know what? I'm 34 and I've decided to go back to school and I'm going to be a doctor. 34. And a lot of people would be like, oh my God, what? 34, you have to start your family, otherwise you can be late. Maybe she's going to meet someone and have a family that's all the happiness that I wish for her. But she followed her call, she has medicine in her blood, so she has to eventually do it in her life. And of course, we don't always have the luxury to do so, because sometimes finances are short, and but what I'm saying here is that at every step of your life, you're going to have pressure. And if you can understand that this pressure you can reduce mentally by your own will, the earlier you understand it, the better and the more effective you're going to be. And then life starts to be exactly how it should be for you, which is decisions, joy, sharing, contribution, and everything else falls into place. It's a fallacy to think that you're going to have to make, choices that are either career or personal. No, we have the capacity to do all of it and to enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be a struggle every day, but you have to put the intention to feel happy, to feel joy, to feel support, and to be selective sometimes, because sometimes some people are not giving you the energy that you need, and you can't keep up with this because you are on your path, and it's fine. You can do everything with respect, and then perhaps you're going to inspire them to also take choices that are good for them, and so on. So I think this is an important message that I want to share. The pressure sometimes is detrimental. It's not worth it. And I speak of experience because a lot of times I've put a lot of pressure on myself. And at the end, with a little bit of perspective, you understand that it wasn't necessary. And I could have done the same, if not more, without being harsh on myself, and with much more joy, because joy is a powerful dynamic as well.
Thank you so much, Hannah. What's a powerful message to end the session with. كما كان قلت النصيحة ديال حناء اللي هي مهمة وكانت في الأخير ديال هذه الحصة، أننا واخا الحاجة تكون صعيبة، واخا تكون هاد لافونتور هذه اللي دابا بديتوها مع دوار تيك اللي هي أكاديمية نساء مقاولات، يقدروا يكونوا فيها شي مراحل اللي هما يجيكم شي شوية صعيبين. هذه ماشي مشكله، الواحد خاصو كما كنقولوا بالدارجه يرخي راسو ويتمتع بهذه اللحظه اللي هو فيها وهذه الفرصه اللي تعطاتو. وكنتمناو ان شاء الله تكون معنا هناء عاوتاني المره الجايه نستضفوها قصه واحده اخرى. كنشكركم كاملات اللي خديتوا من الوقت ديالكم وتحققتوا فينا في هذه الحصه ديال ديجيتال اكسبيرت سيريز. وكان نتفضل بزاف الشكر لليكيب كامله ديال اكاديميه نساء مقاولات، احمد، جاد واسلام والبنيتات اللي حضروا معنا اليوم من النسخه الاولى ديال اكاديميه نساء المقاولات. كنشكركم، وبغيت نفكركم انه ان شاء الله نهار 2 نوفمبر غادي تكون عندنا حصه خاصه غير على التجربه ديال اكاديميه نساء المقاولات اللي غيحضروا معنا 3 البنيتات وبنيتات واحد اخرين من النسخه الاولى اللي غيشاركونا التجربه ديالهم. وهذه فرصه مهمه لكم باش تعلموا اكثر على البرنامج من واحد البيرسبكتيف اللي هو مبدل، من غير حنا ملي تنتلاقاو بكم وكنشرحوا لكم على البرنامج. دابا غتسمعوا من البنيتات اللي مشاو بنفس التجربه اللي دابا نتوما غادي تبداوها. شكرا بزاف هناء، شكرا. تمتعنا بهذه الحصه اليوم معاك، وان شاء الله نستضيفوك عاوتاني مره واحده اخرى معنا.
Thank you so much. شكرا بزاف.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much team, and thank you so much the girls. تصبحوا على خير ونشوفكم قريبا. سلامة.
أما إن شاء الله.